I'd heard that the United States Congress was convening a special session on unconventional shale plays, especially how they related to water contamination and Diana DeGette and Maurice Hinchy's Frack Act, a piece of legislation that's one paragraph long that simply takes out the exemption for hydraulic fracturing to the Safe Drinking Water Act.
All we have to do is think back, because there was a realization back then of how the kind of drilling that had been going on for more than 20 years was having a negative impact. It was poisoning wells. It was making people's lives very, very difficult and dangerous. As the situation with energy changed, the drilling for natural gas was pressing to be able to do it in the least expensive way so that they could have the highest profits, rather than being honest and open about the kinds of things that they were doing. You know, you have to have more information, more details, more understanding. You have to have the people who are doing it being honest about what they're doing.
Somehow, from my back porch across the nation, I was going to wind up in the halls of Congress and finally have a chance for industry and lobbyists to express themselves in this film.
The Subcommittee on Energy and Minerals will now come to order.
In recent months, the states have become aware of press reports and websites alleging that 6 states have documented over 1,000 incidents of groundwater contamination resulting from the practice of hydraulic fracturing. Such reports are not accurate.
Studies and surveys by GWPC, EPA, and IOGCC over the last 11 years have found no real credible threat to underground drinking water from hydraulic fracturing.
Now, why is hydrofracking raising such concerns? The materials used for hydrofracking don't biodegrade. Once they're in the environment, they're in the environment to stay. If just 2% of these hundreds of thousands of wells go south in some way or another, that's thousands upon thousands of incidents, and I invite questions about that.
What Mr. Appleton is doing is searching for a problem that does not exist, because looking at all these other examples in all these states, there has not been a problem with hydraulic fracturing. And I'm proud that I'm supported by the oil and gas industry because they employ a lot of people in my state, and I'm going to stick up for them. And I'm tired of people trying to shut down an industry when they're not educated on the facts. And if you weren't able to do this hydraulic fracturing, how much more would we be dependent on foreign oil and terrorism?
I'm not aware of any documented cases where hydraulic fracturing has failed.
Your time's expired. So, Congresswoman DeGette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Out west, we've had a lot of experiences with different kinds of mining techniques that have caused human health risks and severe environmental damage. Now, Mr. John, you say that hydraulic fracturing absolutely does not pose a threat to drinking water. So if that's true, why would you object to the disclosure of the chemicals used in the fracking process under the Safe Drinking Water Act?
As I mentioned earlier, the information packets that we provide to the...
Why would you object? If it's perfectly safe, why would you object to disclosure of the chemicals that are used?
What I was saying was that we have disclosed today and prior to the hearing...
Which chemicals are used?
Yes, ma'am.
In each process?
They're listed in a fact sheet that's been provided by
So in that
Chesapeake.
case, you would have no objection to my bill?
We've supplied that information.
So would you have an objection to my bill then, since you've already supplied that information?
I'm not personally familiar with your bill, ma'am.
That makes chemicals used in hydraulic fracturing subject to the reporting requirements of the Safe Drinking Water Act.
As stated earlier, we believe that the current regulatory framework... No? We believe the current regulatory framework...
So yes, you would object to my bill because you don't think we would need to report it under the Safe Drinking Water Act, even though you say the chemicals are safe. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. How about you, Mr. Kell? Are you saying that hydraulic fracturing fluids cannot possibly be to blame for water contamination seen in cases across the country?
Allegations that were presented through certain media outlets relative to 6 specific states. We did not survey all states that have oil and gas activity, and therefore would not make the statement that no one has ever identified.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Hinchy.
Mr. John, I just want to follow up on some of the things that were just being talked about. And I know that your company is engaged in a lot of hydraulic fracturing. what chemicals are used in the process?
If you would indulge me to pull it from the sheet and to be sure that I read it correctly, I wouldn't want to offer something from memory that was incorrect.
Please speak a little closer to that mic. We want everybody to hear you.
Thank you, sir. We've listed. Do you want me to go through all of them, sir? I'll start with hydrochloric or muriatic acid as a chemical that would help dissolve some of the muds in the wellbore. We would use an antibacterial agent such as glutaraldehyde. We would have a need for a breaker that would take away some of the viscosity from our fluid that we would use an ammonium persulfate. We would need a corrosion inhibitor to allow the casing strings and the pipes that we use to be preserved.
What's the corrosion inhibitor?
Testing my site here, it's dimethyl formaldehyde. The cross-linker that we would use would be a borate salt. Then use also a friction reducer, petroleum distillate, an iron control agent in some applications, a citric acid, potassium chloride. We would also use an oxygen scavenger.
I wanted to ask Mr. Appleton if you're aware of any of the independent empirical research that has been conducted that in any way suggests that fracking does not pose a risk to water supply.
Anytime you put chemicals like are used in fracking into the environment, it's a risk to water supply if they're not properly regulated.
Well, this subcommittee is now adjourned.
So here's where we're going to end.